Hey friends, today I wanted to show you how I became the best tier 1 player in all of Legion. But Toho, there's no way for you to actually know that, right? Well, Legion has a system where it shows you who has the top game with any given opener. And I have the top game with every single tier 1 opener. So you see friends, I have empirical proof that I am indeed the best tier 1 player in all of Legion. Bravado aside, I really did think this would be a fun but difficult challenge, and being a bit of a memer, I decided to go for it. Today's video will be how I got the top game with Buzz. In case you didn't know about top games, I'll give it a quick rundown. But if you already know about top games, feel free to skip ahead and get right into the match. Go to the leaderboards and at the top, select top games. This shows the best played game with each unit you can open. It's a great resource to check and see how the best players play with different openers. I'm still a little confused by exactly how it works, but basically there's three factors that determine if a game is a top game. Number one is power score by wave 10. You need to have a higher power score than the person with the current top game of that unit. And number two is elo. The higher elo you are, the more likely your game is going to be chosen as a top game. If a player in gold opens with the gate guard and performs really well, they can be overshadowed by somebody in the top 100 if they open with the gate guard as well, even if the player in gold has a higher power score at wave 10. The final factor is winning the game with the top power score. As you will see in these videos, this was the biggest thing to overcome. The way the game picks the unit you open with is based on value. So if I have 7 looters, which is 70 gold, and 1 Nikomata, which is 60 gold, the game will count it as a looter opener. With that out of the way, let's get into it. My plan for this was to play Fiesta and spam whatever T1 they gave me. I didn't really want to do this to a random ally, so I did do every game with a duo. Buzz is one of my favorite ways to play Fiesta, if it's a consort. And I had done no testing before this, so I just kind of winged it with how many I should put down. I knew I wanted the Garg in there, so all I had to do was spend more than 40 gold on Buzzes. I wanted the Garg because it does actually help me kill a snail a little bit faster, and I didn't really want to go only Buzz and get destroyed or have to overbuild on wave 3. Tossing these out there might deter the enemy from a really big 3-cent. And of course I get snailed, and I leaked a little bit too much, but it's okay, I push anyway. That top power score isn't just going to fall into my lap. Wave 2 is here, and I greeted a bit by only placing one more gargoyle. My ally is trying to stack up his shark, and I didn't want to fully hold the wave. Alas, I got snailed again for another sizable leak. It's okay though, Gargs are OP on 3, so we push. Wave 3, added one more Garg and another Buzz. Even though I'm very under here, there's a chance that I hold. Unless I get double snailed. Because of the 40 send, I actually end up with my first pro Fiesta and a casual 7 workers. Wave 4, I decided to go with the Tempest over a consort. The Tempest is pretty weak here on 4, but pretty strong on 5, so if they sent, I plan on pushing a couple of workers. Well, they didn't send. But I checked the person sending into me, and they were overbuilding, so I decided to ball and push 1 to a no send. My ally was overbuilding as well, and quite strong on 5, so I figured it was worth the risk. Wave 5, I added another Tempest, because it was all that I had the money for, and I should at least kill the boss and some of the wave. Well, they sent pretty big, but just look at the split. I had no business holding this well. And they sent to my ally's strongest wave, so he holds and we take minimal king damage. I was much more scared of 6, so this is a bit of a bailout, and I get to go to 10 workers. Wave 6, I add another Tempest and a Buzz to fix the split. I'm still pretty weak here, so it's good that I'm pretty close to on value. That plus my units are incredible for 7 and 8, so as long as I don't leak too much, I can push really hard. They sent a re, and thankfully I held pretty well, and you know what that means, it's time for workers. I push all the way to 14, and add a couple more Buzzes, trying to get the Tempest to tank a bit less. If they send again here with something like a Brute, I may be in a little bit of danger. But I was bailed out, and just got income king. I was feeling pretty confident at this point, and my ally's kingpin was ready for whenever we needed it, so I pushed more workers. I've been incoming every wave, as there is no world any of my enemies have as many workers as me. And the pressure was starting to get to the person I was sitting into, and they leaked a little bit. After another pro leak on 7, it was time for wave 8. I just upgraded Leviathan, as it would probably get me another pro leak or a full hold, which is fine at this point. I also re-rolled for a possible answer to 9 and 11, as those were my next 2 weak waves, and I found Lord of Death, and because I had enough Tempest put down already to buff both the Trinity and the Hades, I swapped them out. I was very weak on wave 9, so I was expecting a skip here, but I got bailed out again and was resent. After an easy hold, I pushed to 20 workers and added a Trinity Archer. My ally and I were both sent on 8, and he got his KP for 9, so I wasn't worried about any king damage, plus I'm not on shutdown yet. Wave 9, I got resent, income king, and actually got another pro Fiesta. Unfortunately, I was actually on shutdown and gave them a bit of free gold. It's now time to stop fiesting. I've got 22 workers and 210 income on wave 9, which is kind of insane. Wave 10 is here, and I sold 2 Buzz to get that Trinity Archer upgrade. Wave 9 was pretty long, and the game is late enough that they could easily send me a mole re. My value hasn't caught up with my workers yet, and if they leaked me bad here, I would be stuck from pushing workers for a couple of waves, killing my momentum. They resent Income King, and it was actually pretty close to a leak. I think a mole here would have destroyed me. Wave 11 was here, and it was time for me to stabilize, so I did not push any workers. That and Giant Snail was in the game, which could make for a devastating re. I went Glacial Touch on my Trinity and added a King Claw, and I decided hiding the Hades for wave 15 might be a really good idea. They Income Kinged again, but since my ally and I were saving Mythium, and I already had 23 workers, I decided not to push again. He stayed overbuilt for me early, so I can get this far ahead, and it's time for me to cover him if he leaks full. Besides, wave 13 is the only real wave they can get me, and so long as I hold that, it's probably a good game. After an easy hold, it was time for wave 12. I added another King Claw because it was my strongest tank for 13. They decided to resend because my ally and I had starved again, but they were out of King Ups, so I knew they were going to have some extra Mythium for whenever they decided to send for real, so I didn't push again, especially since it looked like we were going all the way to 15 at this point. After being sent last wave, I figured they weren't coming here, so it was best to prep for next. So I upgraded 2 more Leviathans, and these are great because they are good for 14, and I'll need them for my Hades on 15. Yup, they didn't send on 13, and everyone had an easy hold, and because of how short the wave was and how strong I was on 14, I called for another skip. Wave 14, and I finally started working on my split. With something like a Trinity Archer and Levi combo, it's really important to have delay on the opposite side to maximize the efficiency of the AoE damage. With our set on 15, I knew I would have enough gold for the full Hades, so I could build full for here just in case. They didn't send on 14, and it was time for me to choose what I was going to send. I had a feeling they would build another Azaria or more steeds, so I went with a double Kraken. If you have Glacial Touch on your most forward DPS, and has enough attack range, there's a chance it will create a 1v1 between the Glacial unit and the Send. This is because the Send is slowed so much that the rest of the wave gets to your units before the Glacial Send. Here's a quick example of a Vulcan Cannon with Glacial Touch versus a Seadram. Do you see how the bad typing matchup is in a 1v1? Yeah, it's not great, and this is what I was hoping their Azaria would do to the Kraken. With the money I got from my Send, I had enough for the full Hades. And if you can, I always recommend hiding something like this. Putting the LOD on 11 or 13 might have helped a bit, but since they didn't send, it worked out. Now they don't know about the Hades and won't send to counter it. Everyone's Send comes out here, and there's nothing to slow down my Hades. Well, except for me. I got my first dragon killed, which is never great, as it is where most of the Hades DPS comes from. It's okay though, my value is too good, and I hold. I get my guy a bit, but unfortunately Teal was overvalue and didn't leak. I covered my allies leak, and the situation started to not look great. All that time saving Mythium, and nobody took king damage. Wave 16, and I'm still on top, but Teal's right there with me, and my ally is out of the game. Remember, they enabled me, so it's up to me to carry this game. Fortunately, this is a great Sui angle. My ally that is out is sending into their most powerful person. He can eventually full push workers to leak Teal whenever we decide to send, and hopefully leak them. We did receive an income send, which made it so that my ally could push hard for our next send. I didn't push as I would eventually have to hold 2 full waves. I was already pretty strong for 17, so I built another Hades to prepare for a possible 18. Besides, Hades is pretty good for every future wave. After checking their value, it was likely they pushed a bit and wanted to go 18 to avoid sending into Levi, Trinity, and Wanderer on 19, so Phoenix and I decided to send as well. Our king is full, and I probably would have held pretty well without sending, but I guess I was nervous. Another play might have been skipping here and going 19 to keep them from sending into us on 20, which is my weakest wave for the rest of the game. The sends come out, and I just got income sent, while my ally got a real send. I think they knew the Sui play was coming, and Teal figured they might hold still and tried to maximize their value with an income send. Teal sending here for us turned out to be the right play, as we leaked them both pretty heavily. And I fully held and covered my ally's leak, so we took no king damage and they took quite a lot. It's wave 19, but everybody was probably sending on 20, so I prepped a bit for it with some Green Devils and another Hades. Teal was now on top, so my ally suggested that he full push for that wave 20 send, and I agreed. It might have been a little bit late, but it's a decision we made, so we went with it. However, in the future, if you're doing something like this, normally the person uses their gold for workers instead of units on wave 19. Yep, there's no send on 19, and looking back at it now, it probably should have been a wave 21 send from us. They have really good units for the wave, and Glacial is really strong on 20 as the boss takes a long time to move in between targets. If my ally didn't Sui, we probably would have lived without sending. Either way, wave 20 is here, and I finish off my flying force with the final Hades. I was down a bit, but I believed in the power of my own Glacial and my army of Hadeses. Here come the sends, and I am melting my boss. I do end up holding with a lot of units left to hopefully fully cover my ally's leak. Unfortunately, since I hadn't pushed, I was never going to leak my guy, and my ally pushed late, so they probably weren't getting theirs either. We ended up taking baby king damage, and it was time for the final play of the game. At this point, it was too late for me to push, so I just had to believe in my value and my build. Flying Force Hades with a bunch of King Claws to stall and slow the attack speed of the wave is no joke, so I did believe in it. Nobody sent on 21, but something interesting happened. Of course my ally was going to leak because they full push, but what I didn't expect was for Yellow to leak so much. I don't know if they suied themselves, which would be pointless because my ally is leaking to a no-send, or maybe they shifted gold to hide their value, or maybe their build was just not great. Regardless, they gave us a juicy 100 gold shutdown. It was now time for the final wave. My ally was full push at this point with 80 plus workers, and I continued to build my King Claw army as I believed I had enough DPS and just needed to stall for them to do their job. I sent what I could and had to hope that I held the longest. We both got sent a little over 1,000, but my value was looking great. And I looked at theirs, and both of them were much lower value than me, so I really did have some hope. My King Claws were King Clawing, my Hadeses were spawning their dragons, it was looking great. I had a really strong feeling that I was going to hold this wave, and probably get us the win. I quickly checked out their side to see how they were doing, and it definitely looked like both of them were going to leak. Because of their low King HP, I knew I was going to stall long enough, and we were going to win. Honestly, my ally did really well for a full Sui, as he held on almost as long as both of the enemies. They had both already leaked, so I know that I didn't need to hold, but it was still cool to see it. Remember what I said about needing to be top power score and win the game? Well, I believe that I would have been top power score after this wave if everybody had lived and the game counted it. And we've done it. It got a little scary around wave 15, but we pulled it off in the end. I now have the best game in all of Legion, opening with a buzz. That's it for me, friends. I hope you enjoyed it, or maybe learned something from this video. I'm going to try and knock these out with a new video every Tuesday.
I got the shivers.